at its best. 1 minute down, next minute up.
Okay, everyone, welcome to the Generation Gap podcast. I'm Tanvi, that's Daniel Ahmed, and this episode is brought to you by Ben Stokes की खूबसूरत मुस्कुराहट जिसको हम वर्ल्ड कप से अब तक एंजॉय करते जा रहे हैं. So,
अजीब यार, गुस्सा आता है देख के.
गुस्सा आता है देख के. मुझे पता था कि इसलिए मैंने इसको हमारा स्पॉन्सर भी बनाया है. So this particular episode isn't so much about the second test match. I think this is sort of the second test match is more of a starting point for a larger discussion about the series and the sort of general woes of the Pakistan team in the last year or so, maybe a bit more, and maybe even like since Misbah has left the captaincy. So it's more about that, but our starting point will be the second test match and the kind of things that happened, the decisions that went into it. But that will just be sort of like a starting point for us. We do want to have like a larger discussion and kind of focus on the reasons and try to break things down. कि क्या-क्या चीजें थी, किन-किन चीजों के जरिए ये हमारा decision हुआ. And before we get to that, I think we just want to kind of, first of all, do away with the main discussion जो बहुत से लोगों की आई है कि the impact of bazball on cricket and the impact of bazball in England winning in Pakistan and all that. And we just want to start off by debunking that and saying कि it's a bullshit tactic. It really should have worked. Most वो एक तुक्का तीर होने वाली situation है. England should have badly lost both test matches. They definitely should have lost the first one after making a horrendous decision. जो उन्होंने क्या नाम है declaration जो की थी जिसकी कोई जरूरत नहीं थी. So yeah, I mean it's just one of those things जो कि मतलब हम पहले ही कहना चाह रहे हैं कि we don't really buy those tactics. I think you also had a pretty good take on that जो हम बात कर रहे थे about this just being a way to kind of paper over the cracks of the England team. This is basically look sort of like a defensive tactic in some ways, even though it's considered to be extremely aggressive. But it's a way to kind of address the weaknesses of their team. So they realize they don't have a good enough batting lineup. Right? I think that was the...
Well, my point, again, this was admitted by Stuart Broad himself, like when he was discussing it, like McCallum ne directly like if these players do not have like very good defensive strategy, like we shouldn't force them to be defensive. We should like make them do what they're comfortable, which is like attacking, and that's what they're trying to make them do. And honestly, all props to them. It's a decent band-aid strategy for the horrendous state of like English Test cricket aajkal. But at the same time, you cannot argue that it's a good strategy. Like I think Abrar Ahmed kind of exposed bazball in the worst way possible. And this was like on the first day, right? Waqar Yunus was talking about how when like Ben Duckett was like smashing Abrar all over the park. Waqar Yunus was the first to point out that Ben Duckett is not confident on the crease. Like he's attacking him because he wants him off the attack. Right, and that's and you eventually saw that with how many wickets Abrar was taking. There was a certain level of like English players know that they cannot sustain or hit really high scores on good bowling. तो उसको वो बैंडेड डालते हैं by attacking. I think by attacking का वही होता है कि वो क्या कहते हैं ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा जो है ना वो उनकी मेंटालिटी यही होती होगी कि अबरार को अगर हम मारेंगे तो अटैक से निकल जाएगा. या फिर अगर हम
which would work in limited overs cricket but not in test matches. वहाँ पे कोई मसला नहीं होता.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone on and you can just keep them going क्योंकि लोग अगर attack करें तो they're more likely to lose a wicket as well. So that tactic is as effective. In some ways, yes, we can say that the tactic works for the England team because it kind of papers over their cracks and the kind of weakness that they have. They don't have really batsmen who can apply themselves and play like long innings. So उनके पास पता है कि हमारे पास हैं ही limited overs के players, so let's just play like limited overs.
Yeah, it works for a team like Pakistan, right? Because Pakistan is very easy to get on, like start playing defensively अगर उसको attack करें. Even in test matches, ये बड़ी अजीब सी चीज़ है हमारी. Like हम test matches में defensive हो जाते हैं. Like थोड़ा डर के. So like they were kind of lucky in the sense कि उनको पता था कि अगर हम पाकिस्तान को attack करेंगे तो पाकिस्तान foreign defense पे आ जाएगी. But if you take a team like Australia, and we're going to go into depth with this later onwards, but like a team like Australia, अगर आप पैट कमिंस को मार रहे हो, पैट कमिंस तो अटैक पे रहेगा और वो eventually wicket लेके ही जाएगा. So like this sort of strategy cannot really work against a very stronger or very much more disciplined.
It can only work on like really flat and dead pitches जिसमें पाकिस्तान उनको पहले टेस्ट मैच में बना के दे दी थी. थोड़ा बहुत भी पिच के अंदर कुछ हो, सेकंड टेस्ट मैच में थोड़ी स्पिनिंग ट्रैक थी. It wasn't even like a really क्या कह सकते हैं quick turning pitch. It had spin but it wasn't like a spinning track. तो उस पे भी उनके लिए मुश्किल हो गई थी और 250 पे उनकी टीम आउट हो गई थी, 280 पे उनकी टीम आउट हो गई थी. सो बेसिकली वही बात है कि आपकी as long as पिच के अंदर कुछ भी है, थोड़ा बहुत भी मौजूद है, तो this strategy doesn't really work. And unless you have like really good bowling supporting you, which they do in this case, कि आपकी ये strategy बड़ी बुरी तरह से fail कर सकती है, और की भी है. मतलब they haven't won that many test matches. They've been very lucky to win the ones they have in Pakistan, to be honest. और पाकिस्तान ने भी बड़ी शदीद किस्म के tactical blunders मारे हैं, जिसकी वजह से मसला हुआ. And coming to the second point, I think this is a good transition to that, क्योंकि हम वही बात कर रहे थे कि in terms of the team, अगर हम पाकिस्तान की बात करें, yes, there are certain decisions that we can talk about कि इस बंदे को रखा था, इसको नहीं रखा, इसको रखना चाहिए था, इसको फर्स्ट टेस्ट मैच बनाना चाहिए था, इसको पहले क्यों नहीं लेके आया, and all that. वो हम बात कर सकते हैं. Then also like overall we can also talk about the grooming strategy that Pakistan has, where we keep introducing players and then keep dropping them, players like Hassan Ali and all that. वो बात भी हम कर सकते हैं. लेकिन I think even with the squad that we have, there is genuinely an issue with strategy. Like the overall squad की बात की जाए, there's a bigger issue with team strategy and less to do with individual skill. The batsmen जो हैं आपके, they're really good as well. You have quite like 4 or 5 good batsmen at this point जिनकी 50 से ऊपर एवरेज आ रही है पिछले साल में. People averaging 60 to 70 के आसपास भी आपके चल रहे हैं in the team. People like Babar and Abdullah Shafiq have been averaging above 60 for the last year or so. So आपके पास players मौजूद हैं. Same with the batting as well. Sorry, same with the bowling as well. You had really good players. जिसमें आपका अफरीदी वगैरह भी थे, and Hassan Ali थे, who were performing really well. And even other spinners who came in for a little while, like Noman Ali, and I think even they performed well for a couple of seasons here and there, and then flopped in some others. But बात वही है कि आपकी overall एक strategic कमजोरी मुझे नजर आ रही है कि आपको exactly पता नहीं कि आपने किस तरीके से खेलना है. I think that's the bigger issue. You don't really have a defined strategy, जो कि आपकी again going back to कि मिसबा के टाइम पे एक थी कि आपको पता था आपने क्या करना है. You had an overall strategy, उसके हिसाब से पिचेस बनी होती थी, उसके हिसाब से टीम की सिलेक्शन होती थी, प्लेयर्स को पता होता था कि जो बंदा जिस जगह पे खेल रहा है मैंने कैसे खेलना है. हर बंदे को अंदाजा था कि यार मिडिल ओवर्स में अजहर को पता होता कि मैंने कैसे बैटिंग करनी है, मैंने बॉलों को रोकना है, और मैंने आराम से 40 के स्ट्राइक रेट पे खेलना है. मिसबा को पता होता उसने किस तरह से खेलना है. यूनुस को पता होता उसका रोल क्या था. क्या नाम है अपना जो हमारा विकेट कीपर था, क्या नाम है, लेकिन सरफराज था. हाँ, सरफराज जो है उसको पता था कि मेरा क्या रोल है. आई एम गोइंग टू कम डाउन द ऑर्डर, आई एम गोइंग टू हिट द बॉल, आई एम गोइंग टू प्ले क्विकली, और मैंने जो है वो क्विक 50 to 100 के बीच में रन मार रहे हैं. तो सबको पता होता था कि मेरा रोल क्या है. आपको पता था कि आपके स्पिनर्स जो हैं उन्होंने चोक करना है टीम्स को. बाकी फास्ट बॉलर ने भी लेंथ रखनी है. दे आर नॉट गोइंग टू ट्राई टू बॉल टू फास्ट आइदर, सिवाय वहाब रियाज के, who was given freedom to do that and to try to swing the ball and try to get reverse swing if he could. तो वो आपको पता होता है कि हर बंदे को पता है कि मैंने क्या करना है, और उसके मुताबिक आपकी टीम जो है वो चल रही होती थी उन टैक्टिक्स के मुताबिक. And you beat England quite easily with that. You beat Australia very easily with that. So the best team of the time, South Africa's time, I think they were almost invincible for about 2 years. They couldn't really get a result against Pakistan in the sense that at least draw series उन्होंने कर लिया था. That's the best they could do. But वो बात है कि that was a really difficult Pakistani test team to beat. They were very hard to beat. I think उसमें यही था कि आपको पता चलता था कि ये ढीठ टीम है, बहुत शदीद इसमें ढीठ टीम थी. वो उनको हराना बहुत मुश्किल होता था. पता है कि वो मतलब पड़ जाएंगे आपके पीछे, स्पेशली होम कंडीशंस में. मतलब आपको जान लगानी पड़ती थी उनको हराने के लिए. एक टेस्ट मैच हराना भी उनको आसान नहीं हुआ करता था. They would just keep fighting. So यहाँ पे मुझे वो चीज़ नजर नहीं आ रही. It doesn't seem like they have a distinctive strategy. They just seem to be trying to find their field. के बीच में भी आपका full sort of pace attack आपने बना दिया, and then for some reason you know क्योंकि आपका सारा point होता है डोमेस्टिक इधर सॉरी क्या नाम है होम कंडीशन में खेलने का कि आप अपने जो एक डोमेस्टिक क्रिकेट की अंडरस्टैंडिंग है उसको यूटिलाइज कर रहे होते हैं. सो आप किस तरह से उस चीज़ को यूटिलाइज करेंगे कि जब आपके प्लेयर्स जिन कंडीशंस में खेल रहे हैं डोमेस्टिक क्रिकेट, जब इंटरनेशनल क्रिकेट में आते हैं तो वो सारी कंडीशन बदल दी जाती हैं. उन्हीं पिचेस पे जहाँ पे ग्रीन टॉप्स बने हुए हैं पिंडी के अंदर, जहाँ पे 250 का एवरेज स्कोर है हर इनिंग्स के अंदर, वहाँ आपने लिटरली बिल्कुल रोड बना दिया जहाँ पे आपकी अगली टीम ने आके 600-700 रन मार दिए. सो व्हाट्स द पॉइंट ऑफ हैविंग, मतलब यू लिटरली डूइंग एवरीथिंग टू डिस्ट्रॉय योर होम एडवांटेज. What is the sense in that? I don't really understand, and that's just one part of the problem from the way I'm seeing it. What do you think about that?
Well, वही बात है कि like I think when we talk about Misbah का era, so like when we make a lot of like analogies between Test cricket and like तो वो जो fort warfare जो होती है, like siege warfare जो होती है. And I think if you make that analogy, you could say कि in your white countries you may have forts, but in like your Asian countries, Test cricket में वो जो गारे नहीं होती जहाँ पे guerrilla warfare होती है. Subcontinent pitches are kind of like that, but subcontinent cricket is kind of like that. कि लाइक जो गारों में लड़ रहे होते हैं ना, उनको पता होता है कि लाइक कि इन्स एंड आउट क्या है, कहाँ से निकलना है, कैसे पिच को इस्तेमाल करना है, कैसे कंडीशन को इस्तेमाल करना है. दे नो द इन्स एंड आउट, बट द पीपल आउटसाइड दे डोंट नो एनीथिंग, राइट? सो दे नो हाउ टू यूज द कंडीशंस अगेंस्ट द टीम बिकॉज़ मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम वहाँ के मुकाम.
That's what I would say for everyone. And going back to one of the things that we discussed, I think that would be a good opportunity to bring it up. जो हम बात कर रहे थे ना about के जब हमने सेकंड टेस्ट मैच की पिच बनाई and wasn't even turning that much, it was just relatively helpful to spin. और उस पे मतलब जो टर्म यूज हो रही थी, it's called a rank turner, and a lot of people say that Indian pitches के बारे में कहा जाता है, श्रीलंकन पिचेस के बारे में कहा जाता है, एंड ओकेजनली पाकिस्तानी पिचेस के बारे में भी ये बात की जाती है कि रैंक टर्नर्स जो हैं वो बनाए हुए हैं. बट दैट्स द होल पॉइंट. दे डोंट से कॉल इंग्लैंड पिचेस रैंक सीमर्स, राइट? रैंक का मतलब ये है कुछ घटिया क्वालिटी की है, घटिया कोई चीज़ है. तो आप हमारी कंडीशन को घटिया कह रहे हैं, आप अपनी कंडीशन को भी घटिया नहीं कहेंगे. यू आर ऑल्सो यूजिंग होम एडवांटेज. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर माइकल क्लार्क जो है वो नेथन लायन को पहले 10 ओवर्स के अंदर बॉलिंग करवाता था, तो वो इसलिए था कि अंडरस्टूड कि नेथन लायन ये पिचेस पे बाउंस है, नेथन लायन नई बॉल के साथ कराएगा. ही समवन हु गेट्स मोर पीपल आउट थ्रू हिज बाउंस, नॉट थ्रू हिज स्पिन, राइट? तो वो एक अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ अ बॉलर भी है, अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ द कंडीशंस भी है, जिसकी बेसिस पे विकेट्स दिया करता था. एंड द गाय हैज लाइक 450 विकेट्स नाउ, आई थिंक, नेथन लायन. सो वही बात है कि हाँ, मैं वही कह रहा हूँ. तो I actually can't believe that Nathan Lyon has 450 wickets. That guy has more Test wickets than Wasim Akram. So ये भी consider that Nathan Lyon has more wickets than Wasim Akram. तो वही मैं कह रहा हूँ कि I still can't believe his success. But the point is कि this shows, Australia में भी है. They understand कि उनकी conditions कैसी हैं. They understand the bouncy pitches. उनके batsmen bouncy pitches पे सेंचुरियां मार रहे होते हैं, हमारे बंदों से खेला नहीं जा रहा होता. Because they don't know how to negotiate that bounce. England के seaming tracks पे उनके batsmen आराम से they know how to defend, they know how to survive those earlier overs, and then they later on, जिस मतलब Jeffrey Boycott जिसकी प्रॉपर टेक्निक थी, that was developed on.
I want to add they used to know how to defend on their pitches. अब तो वो भी नहीं होता.
वो भी नहीं होता. मतलब अब उस तरह की seaming tracks वो बनाते भी नहीं है जिस तरह पहले हुआ करते थे. बट अगेन वही बात है कि आपके अपने होम कंडीशंस का एडवांटेज तो लेना आता है. इफ नथिंग एल्स, यू हैव द फास्ट बॉलर्स, द सीम बॉलर्स हु नो हाउ टू टेक एडवांटेज ऑफ दोस कंडीशंस. कि सीमिंग ट्रैक्स पे हमने कहाँ बॉल करना है, हमने लेंथ कौन सी रखनी है, फॉर एग्जांपल. इवन दैट, या पाकिस्तान के बॉलर्स को पता होता है कि हमने रिवर्स स्विंग कैसे करना है. फॉर एग्जांपल, पाकिस्तान बॉलर्स को पता था कि जी फ्लैट ट्रैक्स है हमारे, सो दे यूज्ड रिवर्स स्विंग टू सॉर्ट ऑफ नलिफाई दैट. But it's kind of ironic that England did the same thing to us. कि उन्होंने reverse swing use करके हमें out करना शुरू कर दिया on flat tracks. They did it twice on like the last days by using reverse swing, जो चीज़ हमने basically evolve की थी, उनको सिखा दी और हम खुद भूल गए उस process में. तो अब I mean that's a separate discussion altogether कि उसकी जो हमें शर्मिंदगी feel हुई थी कि यार reverse swing was being used against us. But I mean उसमें बात ये है कि I don't feel like it's a big issue कि अगर आप अपनी जो पिचेस हैं उनको अपने होम कंडीशन के मुताबिक बनाएं. बट पाकिस्तान इज नॉट डूइंग दैट. कि हम टैक्टिकली जो है उन चीज़ों में थोड़ा लैक कर रहे हैं कि जहाँ पे हम उन कंडीशन को यूटिलाइज नहीं कर रहे. सो दैट ब्रिंग्स अस टू वही बात है जो हमारा कोर ऑफ द इशू था कि अगर टैक्टिकली आपका मसला है, सो देयर आर 3 बिग कल्प्रिट्स इन दैट. तो जो 3 बड़े आपके कल्प्रिट्स हैं, इट्स the PCB chairman, so Rameez Raja in this case. It's the coaching staff, so you have Mohammad Yusuf and you have Saklan Mushtaq, and then there's the captain, Babar. So these are the three people who are sort of the most responsible, in my opinion, जिनके ऊपर हमारा जो है वो सबसे बड़ा इशू आता है. एंड उसमें of course since he is numero uno in that sense, अगर देखा जाए तो आपका let's start from the top and let's start off with, as you succinctly put it, Rameez Raja की चवलें. So basically Rameez Raja की चवलों की बात करेंगे. And I think I'll hand it over to you because I felt you really summarized it well about what you were saying about what Rameez Raja really is, and you mentioned him not really being an administrator but being something entirely different.
Yeah, he is more of a, and this is but like I'm directly quoting from like Usman Samiuddin's article, like जिसने Cricinfo पे लिखा था. He's more of a, he knows how to speak the media language, so he's more of a media guy than an administrator. So for like so we know as Pakistanis कि like Qaid-e-Azam trophy की जो pitch थी वो इतनी बड़ी घास थी उसकी 2 दिन पहले, ठीक है, and they cleared out the grass and they made it flat एकदम से, and now we're acting surprised. But obviously the foreign press doesn't know that, the foreign players do not know that, and frankly, I mean, this is going to be a bit blunt, they're too racist to care. So to like sort of care about Qaid-e-Azam trophy. So like they're not going to investigate more about this. So like sort of like Rameez Raja sort of uses that to his advantage. So he says some very catchy line that can like sort of make headlines in like all the sports sort of like newspapers around the world, where he says, oh, we're living in the dark ages of like pitches. Okay, we don't know how to make pitches. And these are like, this is like classic media language, because it frames you as a victim for not having international cricket for like 10 to 12 years. And like it's
and also
it cashes on
into the whole kind of क्या कह सकते हैं, racist kind of racist idea of Pakistanis or at least brown countries not being evolved enough to understand how to make good pitches. So that's also an idea. He's kind of playing into that role as well. But it kind of reminds me a bit of, I don't know if you ever saw that Tyrul Qadri. So I remember Maulana Tyrul Qadri जो था उसकी Tyrul Qadri था कौन था, the guy who जिसने धरना दिया होता, I'm completely forgetting his name. Tyrul Qadri था, हाँ. So Tyrul Qadri का I remember एक fascinating किस्म का मैंने देखा था clip जिसमें एक वो कर रहा था, तकरीर कर रहा था. So basically एक तकरीर वो अंग्रेजी में कर रहा था for the western audience, कि जी वेस्टर्न मीडिया के सामने जो कर रहा था वो अंग्रेजी में कर रहा था, and then there was एक उर्दू में उसकी जो स्पीच थी, और जमीन आसमान का फर्क. जो उसकी जो अंग्रेजी में स्पीच उसमें कह रहा है कि हम पीसफुल प्रोटेस्टर्स हैं और हम पीस में बड़ा बिलीव करते हैं और हम ये करते हैं और वो करते हैं, और जैसे उर्दू में हम चीर के फाड़ देंगे, हम ये कर देंगे, हम वो कर देंगे, हम तबाह कर देंगे, लिटरली इन द सेम ब्रेथ कि जो बंदा यहाँ से उठ के जाए तो मैं मार दूंगा. तो इस तरह की बातें वो कह रहा है. He's threatening his own people. तो
I do want to add,
वहाँ पे एक लगा हुआ है.
I do want to add Tyrul Qadri. Yeah, Tyrul Qadri is a classic example of like Western ignorance, because Tyrul Qadri is like very famous in the West for being one of the most moderate scholars, because उसने बहुत से फतवे निकाले हैं कि like how terrorism is bad and like suicide bombings नहीं हो सकती. So like, and when people are defending when people are going against Islamophobia in the West, they quote Tyrul Qadri. But like us locals who actually know Tyrul Qadri, they're like, what the fuck? ये
वो तो ये बात अपने बंदों को मारने की बातें कह रहा था. His own supporters. उठ के जाओगे तो मैं तुम्हें मार दूंगा, मैं ये कर दूंगा, literally. तो मतलब वही बात है ना कि it's just a lack of understanding, और एक लोकल नॉलेज के बारे में लोग नहीं जानते और ना ही वो उतना उसके रिस्पेक्ट करते हैं कि यार किसी लोकल बंदे से पूछ लें हम, या तुम मुझे बता दो तो क्या चीज है. उनके लिए मतलब वही लोकल बंदा है, ही इज द गाय दे नो, ही इज देयर कॉलीग, दे स्पेंड अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम विद हिम. सो यू नो फॉर देम इट्स लाइक ठीक है तुमने कह दिया तो सही होगा वाली बात. तो वो भी इसका फायदा उठा रहा है. ठीक है जी, ये मतलब चवल है, मैं मतलब उनको यकीन आ जाएगा, मैं उनको ये कह रहा हूँ, मैं थुक लगाने की कोशिश करूंगा तो वो मान भी जाएगा, अच्छा हाँ हमें पिचेस बनानी नहीं आती, हाँ हमें ऊपर से मतलब एक और चवल मारी में हमें ड्रॉपिंग पिचेस यूज करनी चाहिए, व्हिच अगेन आई फील लाइक कि मतलब वो कह रहे हैं चवल नंबर 1 तो आपने ये मारी, फिर उसके बाद अगर ड्रॉपिंग पिचेस हम लेके आ जाएंगे. और भाई पहले जो है मतलब, and I think you might have looked into this as well, he already had a stint which was also pretty terrible for Pakistan during the Musharraf era. उस वक्त भी पाकिस्तान की काफी बुरे टेस्ट मैचेस हुए थे और काफी बुरी पाकिस्तान की परफॉर्मेंस हुई थी अंडर हिम, एंड अगेन इट्स हैपनिंग in Pakistan, because अगर overall देखा जाए, I remember some guy posted this picture about like the 2022 retrospective उसने किया हुआ था, मतलब पाकिस्तानी मतलब उनसे से सर पकड़ के बैठे हुए हैं, इसमें मतलब आपका एशिया कप था वो भी हम हारे, वर्ल्ड कप का फाइनल वो भी हम हारे, अब इंग्लैंड के टेस्ट मैच वो भी हमारे, ऑस्ट्रेलिया के खिलाफ वो भी हम हारे, मतलब सारे टाइम यूं करके बंदे बैठे हुए। और वो उसका भी था ना हमारा, वो कौन सा बाजिद खान था, बाजिद खान की पिक्चर भी आई थी, बेचारा यूं मुंह बनाया, उसको कब्ज हुई शरीक से, यूं बेचारा रोने की हालत उसकी हुई है। जब उसका पुराना दिखाते वर्ल्ड कप के दौरान भी उसका एक्सप्रेशन वही सेम बना हुआ था, फाइनल के बाद भी, और अभी भी उसका जो है वो सेम एक्सप्रेशन बना हुआ था बेचारे का, कि यार मतलब मैं किधर फंस गया हूँ, मेरी मुसीबत खत्म नहीं हो रही। एक सेकंड ठहरे, जस्ट होल्ड ऑन फॉर अ सेकंड। I just
I
my
wanted
cat.
I wanted to talk about how like adding into like strategy and like which is normally hum log so this adds into how normally test cricket is played, where it's more about के जो domestic players जो बचपन से literally since they have been 9 years old जिस conditions में खेल रहे होते हैं, हम उन्हीं conditions में जब foreign team आती है तो naturally हमारे players are more sort of attuned to them, right? So like test cricket is not really about, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding because Rameez Raja openly said this a lot during Australia कि हमें क्या कहते हैं पिचेस ऐसे बनानी है जिससे हम जीत सकें, तो आई थिंक वो मेंटालिटी गलत है. सो अ टीम लाइक इंडिया, अ टीम लाइक श्रीलंका, or even a team like India and Australia as you've mentioned, they do well in their home conditions because वो players बचपन से वहीं पे खेल रहे होते हैं, उनको they know the pitch completely in and out, उनसे बेहतर उस pitch को कोई नहीं जान सकता, right? So under those home conditions obviously they are more advantaged, वो एक fort mentality आ जाती है, कि like it's a foreign country laying siege to a fort, और fort को obviously native से ज़्यादा बेहतर कोई जानता नहीं. So there's a fundamental misunderstanding of that. तो हमने अपनी strategy ये बनाई कि बाकी टीमें पिच डॉक्टर करती हैं तो हम भी अब देखना कैसे पिच डॉक्टर करेंगे. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so हम भी जो है ना ऐसी पिचेस को डॉक्टर करेंगे and हम भी ना अपने एडवांटेज पे लाएंगे. But what they don't understand is कि other teams are not doctoring their pitches. They're just making pitches that are relevant to their conditions. हम क्या करते हैं कि बजाय इसके कि हम ऐसी पिच बनाएं जो हमारी स्ट्रेंथ्स को sort of बेहतर करें या उसको bolster करें, हम दूसरे की टीम की स्ट्रेंथ्स को देखते हैं हम और उसको नलिफाई करने की कोशिश करते हैं. हम ये भूल जाते हैं
हम अपनी वीकनेसेस देख के उसके मुताबिक पिच बना रहे होते हैं. यार हमारी बैटिंग जो है उसमें हम थोड़े सा हैं, तो लेट्स मेक अ कंप्लीटली फ्लैट ट्रैक जहां पे बॉल जो है ना स्पिन करे ना वो स्पिन करे, इसकी बेसिस पे हमारे बॉलर्स कुछ कर पाए.
एंड वी फॉरगेट द फैक्ट कि जब हम दूसरों की स्ट्रेंथ्स को नलिफाई कर रहे हैं तो हम अपनी भी स्ट्रेंथ्स को नलिफाई साइमल्टेनियसली कर रहे हैं, एंड दैट लीड्स टू अ ड्रॉ नेचुरली. सो लाइक वही बात है. So like we keep talking about, so like वो again this adds into like with Jared Kimber जिस तरह की बातें कर रहा होता है, where he keeps talking about पाकिस्तान में historically क्या कहते हैं बहुत सारे draws होते हैं and they're behind test cricket. No, they're not behind test cricket. Let's face it. We have a problem in our mentality. We have historically played very defensive cricket. Only time test cricket. Only time we have had like attacking test cricket was during the Misbah era. और मे बी द इमरान खान एरा. बट उसके अलावा नॉर्मली हमारी मेंटालिटी यही होती है कि हम दूसरे की कंडीशंस को नलिफाई करते हैं, दूसरों की स्ट्रेंथ्स को नलिफाई करते हैं, एंड दैट्स अ वेरी नेगेटिव अप्रोच टुवर्ड्स क्रिकेट एंड दैट हैज बैकफायर्ड कंप्लीटली. आई डोंट थिंक ये सुधरने वाला है. आई एम नॉट ऑप्टिमिस्टिक अबाउट दिस. आई नो कि न्यूजीलैंड आएगी, न्यूजीलैंड की स्ट्रेंथ क्या है, बॉलिंग है, फिर वो फिर से फ्लैट.
आई थिंक ड्रॉज का एक और रीजन ये भी है कि पाकिस्तान में एक डिफेंसिव खेला भी होगा, दिस आल्सो कंडीशंस का भी है, बिकॉज अब पिचेस टेंड टू डिटेरियोरेट अ लॉट लेस. कंडीशंस ऐसे हैं कि पाकिस्तानी पिचेस डोंट डिटेरियोरेट एज मच, जिस वजह से वो होता है कि लास्ट डेज में भी बैटिंग करना उतना मुश्किल नहीं होता. सो यू आर लेस लाइकली टू लाइक लास्ट इनिंग कोलैप्सेस. पाकिस्तान ने तो खुद ही इस दफा जोर शोर लगा के अपने आप को कोलैप्स करवा लिया, लेकिन if you have a half decent batting जिसमें कोई अपने कोई mental strength जिसमें थोड़ी ज़्यादा है या थोड़ी planning बेहतर तरीके से करे तो they won't really collapse. You won't get too many results because the conditions at least. आप खुद गलती करें तो और बात है, लेकिन conditions उसको ज़्यादा assist नहीं करेंगे.
Is that true though? In the sense, I do agree with you. So here's the thing: Pakistan is a very diverse geography, right? So like we can say that maybe in a sort of like city like Multan, you can say that the pitch won't deteriorate because that's a very dry climate. But Pindi should not look like that. Pindi is a much more sort of cooler climate and it's much more like sort of a wet climate. You cannot really argue that like वहाँ पे भी जो है ना pitch hard होनी चाहिए. Same with Karachi. Like this idea that like across the board हमारी pitches एक ही तरह है. That's where there's something really fishy.
I agree. वो तो even आपके within country भी आपके differences तो आएंगे जहाँ जहाँ भी आप खेलेंगे वो तो है. Just talking about historically किस तरह से आपकी pitches बनती रही हैं पाकिस्तान के अंदर उसकी वजह भी है. Plus I mean I do understand कि उन्होंने भी बड़ा defensive उन्होंने से खेला है. Test match cricket में especially Pakistan has always been very conservative. Even in the times कि हमें लगता था कि यार पाकिस्तान cricket बहुत aggressive है और ये है वो है. Imran Khan considered to be a Test captain has the highest draws of any captain in the world, if I'm not wrong. He didn't lose a lot of games, but he didn't win that many either. Misbah has more wins than Imran. And Imran drew most of his games. तो उससे ही आपको अंदाजा हो जाता है. Yes, I mean overall भी उस टाइम पे जिस वो खेलता था draws ज़्यादा हुआ करते थे. I agree with that. But बावजूद इसके इमरान खान की reputation as an aggressive captain doesn't really stand when you consider his record. वो ज़्यादातर मैचेस में ड्रॉ किया करता था because हमारे tactics defensive थे. We used to have a lot of really defensive batsmen actually. That's been like the classic Pakistani model has somehow been mostly relying heavily, especially in test matches. One day cricket में तो फिर different है, लेकिन one test cricket में it's been heavily relying on spinners and defensive batsmen to get results. And Misbah kind of took that classic model and re-implemented that in a way. कि उसमें दोबारा वो spinners को लेके आया. They were like the bulk of the attack. He relied heavily on spinners to get wickets, and the seamers were kind of like support bowlers जो उनको साथ दे रहे होते थे. They would occasionally get wickets, but they were not relied on completely. कि अच्छा तुमने ही साथ कुछ करना है, तुम ही results निकालने हैं. No, and the batsmen were mostly like very defensive-minded players who could just stay on the wicket and frustrate other teams. और उसके बाद they would just try to soften the ball, and then eventually जब ball move around करना बंद कर देती थी, they would just start making runs at that point. तो उस तरह के हमारे टैक्टिक्स क्लासिकली हमेशा रहे हैं. I see nothing wrong with that, to be honest. मुझे उसमें कोई मसला नहीं है कि पाकिस्तान अगर दोबारा उस तरह से खेल भी ले. लेकिन बात वही है कि पाकिस्तान अब उस तरह से खेल भी नहीं रहा. जो मुझे प्रॉब्लम वही नजर आ रहा है कि they still don't seem to have any tactics kind of lined up कि हमने आगे क्या करना है. Okay, we don't want to play that way anymore, but then how the hell do we want to play now? I'm not saying they should play that, they should even try to change that, but somehow they decided कि हमने change करना है उसको. लेकिन change करके क्या बनाना है उन्हें अभी तक पता नहीं. और जो करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, that's failing very badly, as we've seen in like two pretty terrible series losses to both Australia and England.
Rameez Raja kind of reminds me a lot of like Elon Musk in the sense that he kind of makes him he makes himself kind of feel like he's this innovative designer or something like that, and he's bringing forward this new idea. हाँ
मतलब वो बहुत बड़ा मैं कोई जीनियस हूँ और मैं बहुत कोई इनोवेशन लेके आना चाह रहा हूँ, मैं चेंज करके लाना चाह रहा हूँ, and just every decision he makes just makes things worse.
Yeah, and बात वही है कि वो मार जब लेना होता है. So like अब वो बोल रहा है कि like कोई टेस्ट क्रिकेट देखना नहीं चाहता 5 दिन की, and like हम इसलिए बोल रहे हैं कि हम T20 प्लेयर्स अपने ले आए. अब इससे बड़ी कोई चवल हो नहीं सकती. It's a very classic media thing to say. I pointed this out like in the call as well. That this is something you expect Harsha Bhogle to say, and Harsha Bhogle तो आपको पता चवल इंसान है. Like he's a very good commentator, but he doesn't know a lot about cricket. He's more about the business of cricket or the marketing of cricket.
He might understand like the statistics of cricket and all that kind of stuff. Okay, he understands a lot of stats and all. Knowledge के चले मुझे नहीं पता उसका. I wouldn't really know कि उसका मतलब ओवरऑल एक क्रिकेट की बेसिक्स का नॉलेज किस तरह का है, लाइक इन टर्म्स ऑफ कोचिंग का नॉलेज क्या है, या एक प्लेयर की टेक्निक के बारे में कि वो किस तरह से इंप्रूव की जा सकती है. दैट काइंड ऑफ लाइक वेरी बेसिक हार्डकोर स्टफ शायद उसको नहीं पता. ही अंडरस्टैंड्स लाइक ओवरऑल क्रिकेट के आप क्रिकेट की जो क्या कह सकते हैं कवरेज है, ब्रॉडकास्ट है, जो मैचेस ब्रॉडकास्ट हुए हैं उनके बारे में ही विल अंडरस्टैंड दैट
Yeah.
probably than most, but वो बात है कि हाँ, he's not going to sit down with say विराट कोहली and tell him कि यार तुम्हारी टेक्निक में ये मसला है.
Yeah.
When someone like Ponting can do that, example.
Yeah. Exactly.
कि उसका बैठ के बताएगा यार तुम्हारी टेक्निक में ये इशू आ रहा है, like और नासिर हुसैन for example could do that.
And yeah, but वही बात है कि like again there is another dangerous trend in cricket in general where there is a hyper sense of progressivism in the sense that what's the next big thing, and we're not really satisfied with what we already have, and Test cricket kind of exemplifies that wholly, you know, sacrilegious figure जिसको हम नहीं हाथ लगाते, but अब उसमें भी हम changes लाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि नहीं ये भी गलत है, इसको भी हमने सही करना है. Now when Rameez Raja says कि कोई Test cricket देखना नहीं चाहता, I don't think he has seen Twitter during even those flat pitches like Pakistani matches. Like a lot of Pakistanis were watching those matches, even though in those flat pitches. It's not like there isn't a demand for Test cricket. But ये narrative constantly push होता रहता है. And it's very scary. And वही बात होती रहती है, like, and again that's why one of the reasons.
Crowds नहीं आते. I understand, like you don't see that many crowds there. Ground में तो लोग नहीं. मतलब ओवरऑल लोग देख रहे होंगे, ग्राउंड में कोई बात है कौन बंदा पूरा दिन बैठ के मैच देख सकेगा. That's the difficult thing. 5 दिन people are following it constant.
Yeah, Test cricket is more like comfort food. It's more like कि you're watching, you know कि बंदा रोक रहा है तो like आप वॉशरूम जा सकते हो, आप खाना पका सकते हो.
Yeah. बैक में चल रहा होता है, आपने गाना लगा दिया है, you're not even focusing on it much, but it's there. और जब वो बंद होगा तो आपको नोटिस करेंगे अच्छा
हाँ. फिर आप रीप्ले में देखते हो आउट हो गया, मैंने देखा ही नहीं.
देखा ही उसमें चले, you know, we've discussed Rameez Raja and his Chawalain. Let's move on to the other you know guys जो कि हम इसको responsible कह रहे हैं, Chawalain Mushtaq and Mohammad Yusuf, like the coaching team जो आपकी है, like the two big guys जिनका काम है इस मामले में. So how do we see their role? Is their role that important in this case? Should they be blamed? Should they not be blamed because Rameez Raja is perhaps forcing them to act in a certain way and telling them to do things that they might not be comfortable in doing? Or is it their fault as well कि यार उन्होंने इस तरह की tactics वो पाकिस्तानी टीम के अंदर लेके आए हैं की वजह से we're seeing these kind of results?
First of all, there is just no excuse for hiring someone like Mohammad Yusuf in any like official administrative capacity. This is just no excuse. Like, what's the rationale behind it? He has such a huge history of being a constant menace in the team. Like, why would you put him back into that system? Like,
I couldn't really understand कि Rameez Raja और उन्होंने जो गालियां दी टीवी पे और then he hired him. कि उसने उसको गाली दी कि बोलनी आती है, अंग्रेजी बोलने तो रखा गया है. उसने उसको पता क्या कमीना है क्या कहा था, I don't remember कि उसकी क्या उसके लिए वर्ड यूज की. हाँ मकार.
हाँ मकार लोग बैटिंग बोल रहे हैं.
उसको प्रोफेसर कहा था कि तुम अंग्रेजी के प्रोफेसर हो, मतलब तुम्हें इधर रखा गया, ये किया गया, वो किया गया, मतलब इस तरह की बातें उन्होंने किसी को सुनाई है. नहीं हायर्ड द गाय. आई डोंट रियली अंडरस्टैंड दैट. दोनों ने गलत बात की.
रमीज है प्रोफेसर का और मोहम्मद यूसुफ मकार है.
वो बात सच दोनों ने बोला. बात है कि अब I couldn't really understand इस तरह की exchange के बाद how did they end up, you know, working with each other after that. I can't really understand it. तो वो मतलब अब एक जगह अपने तौर पे एक मसला है, लेकिन अगेन वही बात है कि मोहम्मद यूसुफ और चौलाइन मुश्ताक के I don't know कि क्या कोचिंग क्रेडेंशियल्स हैं. उससे पहले उन्होंने कितनी कोचिंग की है पाकिस्तान टीम के लिए. आकिब जावेद का as much might make fun of him, he does have credentials. उसने काफी सारी कोचिंग कोर्सेज भी किए हुए हैं. he's done coaching for quite a while. और बड़े लंबे अरसे उसने ग्रास रूट लेवल पाकिस्तान में भी काम किया हुआ है. I might disagree with a lot of his things that he might say, but again I know he has coaching credentials. इनका मुझे पता नहीं. I honestly don't know कि उन्होंने किस हद तक मतलब कोई क्या have they done any courses, have they coached at junior level, what exactly have they done?
Well, classic case of, and again this is a constant criticism of Rameez Raja because we started noticing and जो टीम बनाई है वो Rameez Raja से जो पहले regime थी उसी ने टीम बनाई है. Rameez Raja is kind of riding the wave and kind of ruining the wave at the same time. Like in the sense कि like he has this thing where he tries to like constantly portray himself as revolutionary. So he tries fixing stuff that isn't broken. So like सबसे पहले आके he was like मैं मिसबा को और वकार यूनुस को निकाल. Now you can understand firing someone like Waqar Yunus, but there's no excuse for fighting someone like Misbah. I didn't get it. Misbah he's a known tactician. उसके अंडर टीम अच्छी जा रही थी. Like why would you remove him? Like and like at least in the test capacity, Red Ball में तो रखते ना. Like I don't get it. And then you brought in someone like Misbah of his stature, of his tactical mind. You remove him and you bring in someone who hasn't even been fucking captain of like the team. And I'm not saying captains should be like coaches. Obviously, Justin Langer is one of the best sort of coaches out there right now, and he was never captain. But I'm saying Sultan Mushtaq was just a baller. Like he was a good baller, very good baller. But he's just, and he doesn't even have coaching credentials either. He's just been consulted for the English team.
He was a very intelligent bowler. I would say I used to watch the Sultan Mushtaq, and he was like supposed to be the next Pakistani captain as well. Like he was definitely felt like जब वो आया था कि he groomed for that. He had that aggressiveness, he had that like, but also like mental strength as well. तो मतलब जब पहले 3-4 साल like he was on at the peak of his game, he seemed like he was going to be the next captain, or he would become captain eventually. But his game fell off so badly at one point. उसके बाद फिर वो टीम से निकल गया, and he couldn't really make that claim anymore. तो वो एक चीज मैं he's a very intelligent cricketer, but in the same way, Mohammad Yusuf is also like an excellent batsman. He's definitely one of the top Pakistani batsmen of all time, definitely top 5. So, वो बात है कि they are great players, but I don't know कि उनकी coaching credentials exactly क्या है. Have they performed at any level in terms of coaching? Have they, taught at junior level? Have they coached a PSL team? They haven't really done anything of that sort that I know of. तो उस basis पे आप उनको national team में क्यों लेके आ रहे हैं? That part I don't really understand.
They've even kind of done something that we have never done, like something right that we were doing. We have sort of like this very anxious selection policy, because पहले हम like historically, or at least since मैं जब से cricket देखा, the one thing that we would do right is we would invest in players. Player खेल रहा है नहीं खेल रहा. Umar Akmal and Ahmed Shahzad are the biggest example of that. We would still keep giving them chances. We would still invest in them. And you would end up seeing some really good gems जो कि evolve होके अच्छे players बनते थे. And उसके examples are Shaheen Afridi is a good example of that. मिसबा का पूरा दौर. Yeah.
मैं कह रहा even Babar का पूरा test cricket. Like अगर Mickey Arthur उसको chance ना देता test cricket में, तो he would not become the test player or the test batsman he is right now, because he failed consistently for about a year in test batting, and then eventually he got better. So
exactly. So, and again, वही बात है कि like वो क्या कहते हैं, we have like Shaheen Afridi and all of these players. Misbah again groomed some really good players. Like he had, if you can give him props for anything, it is the fact that he invested in players. He believed in players. उसने constant criticism भी face की, जब इफ्तिखार को डाला या आसिफ को डाला या जो भी डाला. But like जो हमें T20 में जो success मिली है, जो अभी जो हमारी team फिर भी कोई ढंग की है, वो a lot of that has to do with Misbah's investment into the team. But अब we see a total opposite. In the sense that what's went wrong is कि Hassan Ali, he had the most wickets for any bowler last year, 40 fucking wickets, and he was dropped after a series. Fawad Alam was dropped after a series and one match. And like it's weird. It must suck being in the Pakistani. Yeah.
Especially if you're a fast bowler. और ये like इस टाइम पे तो even spinners भी नहीं है. यासिर शाह बीच में आता है, वो गायब हो जाता है. नोमान अली आता है, वो गायब हो जाता है. वो जो साजिद खान था, I think spinner था, वो आया, वो गायब हो गया. You had so many players just coming and disappearing overnight. आप समझ भी नहीं आती थी वो किधर गए. Like literally एक बुरी सीरीज होती थी, especially like one bad series against Australia. अगर आपकी हो गई तो उसके बाद तो आप पाकिस्तानी टीम आप नहीं आएंगे. तो
it's not even their fault. It's not even their fault.
आप एक फ्लैट ट्रैक पे एक बंदे को खिलाएंगे और उसके बाद उससे बॉलिंग नहीं होगी, वो विकेट्स नहीं लेगा, तो उसके बाद आप उसको टीम से निकाल देंगे. लाइक इट्स जस्ट ridiculous. In that way, Babar was probably lucky not to be selected for the first test match, to be honest.
Yeah.
अगर देखा जाए उस ट्रैक पे कुछ नहीं करना था, मैं आपको गारंटी देता हूँ. He couldn't do anything on that pitch either. तो वही मैं कह रहा हूँ कि that's also a big problem as well. Because tactically, I feel like मतलब डिसीजन मेकिंग तो आपकी बहुत फजूल रही है इस मामले में कि आपने प्लेयर्स जो हैं उनको ग्रूम नहीं किया, आपने प्रॉपर तरीके से उनको बनाया नहीं, इवन टीम की जो सिलेक्शन आपकी रही है, बिकॉज आई फील लाइक के जो आपने ऑलराउंडर्स इतने रखे हुए हैं तो कोई फायदा के टाइम पे अगर गोइंग बैक टू दैट दे डिडंट रियली हैव एनी ऑलराउंडर्स डिड we basically had specialist batsmen and we had specialist bowlers. Did we have any all-rounders at the time? हमारी टीम में कोई एक भी था, I can't really recall, especially test matches में, जब इस्पा का टाइम था. Did we have any all-rounders in the team, like test team at least? I can't recall a single all-rounder of any significance to be honest, except for Hafiz maybe to some. Hafiz was not really used much. थोड़ा बहुत उसको बॉलर के तौर पे यूज करते थे, but he wasn't really seen as anything more than like a support bowler जो कभी कभार बीच में बॉलिंग कराता था जब लेफ्ट हैंडर्स आते थे. उस वजह से हफीज एक बंदा था जो कि सॉर्ट ऑफ एक टेस्ट ऑलराउंडर के तौर पे यूज होता, बट दे वुड नॉट रिलाई ऑन ऑलराउंडर्स एट ऑल. अभी पता नहीं क्यों उन्होंने सडनली इतने ऑलराउंडर्स आप लेके आ गए, आपने नवाज को खिला लिया, आपने फहीम अशरफ को खिला लिया. व्हाई नॉट हैव हसन अली इन दैट? Why do you have all-rounders in that? You need to have like specialist batsmen going all the way down to like 6 or 7. मतलब उसमें आपके पास पहले, even though I think he wasn't like the best player that we had, like अजहर के साथ जो आता था, शफीक जो था, but Shafiq was a good number 6. Like he knew how to play that position. So वो बात है कि you need like proper batsmen all the way down to number 7. You have good top 4 right now, लेकिन उसके बाद 5, 6, 7 पे you're very jittery. So वो बात है कि you need like 2 or 3 specialist batsmen in there instead of all-rounders, and you need like specialist bowlers. चाहे 4 आपके bowler हों अच्छे, but you can actually do a lot with that if you have 4 really good bowlers. लेकिन मसला वो एक फिलहाल आपकी I don't know, आप क्यों भी ऑलराउंडर्स रखने की कोशिश करें अपनी टीम के अंदर. इफ यू कैन हैव समवन हु इज जेन्युइन, वो भी मतलब कर सकते हैं इन द सेंस कि भाई अशरफ कुड बी a good test all-rounder, लेकिन उसको भी you haven't persisted with the guy either. He needs to be given enough opportunity to evolve and to play for a while in different conditions जहाँ पे proper all-rounder बन सके. लेकिन अगर उसको proper chances नहीं देंगे तो फिर भी कोई फायदा नहीं है, एक आध सीरीज में उसको लाने का कोई फायदा नहीं. So it's just like tactically I feel like they're all over the place. उन्हें पता नहीं कि exactly हमने अपनी strengths को कैसे maximize करना है, and I mean I feel like their sort of lack of understanding of the Pakistani team and of tactics generally is not really helping either. So I think उसके बाद I guess let's just come down to the last man in this situation, which is Babar Azam. काफी भी उंगलियां जो है वो उठा रहे हैं, because I feel like people have kind of skipped the first in most discussions and they've gone directly to Babar Azam from the most of the Twitter conversations that I've seen. ये लोग जो है वो immediately सरफराज को याद कर रहे हैं और बाबर को गालियां दे रहे हैं basically या वो मिस्बा को याद कर रहे हैं और बाबर को गालियां दे रहे हैं कि ऐसे सारा काम खराब कर दिया, ये कर दिया, उसने वो कर दिया. So how do you see Babar's role? How much do you blame him for this loss? उसमें उसका कितना role है as you see it?
I think when Babar was first made captain, the first criticism that anyone had captaincy material thing, in the sense that people could see natural leadership qualities.
आपकी आवाज थोड़ी कम आ रही है, by the way. Your voice is not that.
I'm talking about like when Babar first became captain, the constant criticism was that he wasn't captaincy material, and not because of his natural leadership skills, but he just कहते हैं ना भोला बहुत in the sense he is the ideal captain that any cricket board would dream of. In the sense cricket board या management जो भी बोलेगी ये वो करेगा, और ना सिर्फ करेगा, he's going to confidently represent those views in front of the media and going to back them as his own decision. Sort of embodies them. It's pretty fucking clear by this point. जो भी decision making होती है वो background में होती है. Fikran Mushtaq makes those decisions. Maybe बाबर का थोड़ा उसमें पिचन होता होगा. Selection की policy की selector decide करता है. Team की strategy coach decide करता है. क्या कहते हैं? And Babar Azam has very little say. He's more of a natural leader. His job is more to sort of, bolster the troops per se and to sort of like boost their morale and all that stuff, which he's very good at. But at the same time, he does not have that tactical mind, जो कि हमें field के अंदर दिखता है जब coaches की input नहीं आ रही होती. So like he doesn't have that tactical mind, and we saw that consistently. वही issue है कि any controversial decision that is being made, it's pretty clear that the coaches made them, but आगे बाबर को कर दिया जाता है, फिर बाबर अपने आप को डिफेंड करता है कि हम ये करेंगे, हम and like and I kind of feel bad for him. Like he's sort of like the scapegoat of this management. He does need to be removed though. I don't think ऐसी mentality होनी चाहिए किसी कैप्टन की कि वो management से सनाता है. Quite a contrast with Virat Kohli in that regard. कि विराट कोहली मैनेजमेंट से डरता नहीं था, like उसने मैनेजमेंट चेंज कर दी थी जब वो दब रहा था.
I think his whole ये भी it's a kind of interesting because I feel like Babar is someone who should be compared to Tendulkar. कोहली तो जस्ट वही बात है कि उसका he's more of a contemporary, तो लोग उसको automatically उसके साथ compare कर देते हैं. But in a lot of ways, because I remember growing up and seeing Tendulkar, तो मुझे याद है कि तेंदुलकर का रोल बड़ा सिमिलर था टू बाबर के इन द सेंस कि उस जमाने में ही जैसा बाबर अभी ही इज लाइक द ओवरवेलमिंगली द नंबर 1 बैट्समैन इन द पाकिस्तान टीम. एवरीवन नोज, एवरीवन काइंड ऑफ ग्रेविटेट्स अराउंड हिम. आपको पता है कि बाबर जब खड़ा हुआ पाकिस्तान टीम के पास चांस है. अब बाबर जब आउट होगा, ये वीडियो जस्ट वेंट आउट बाय हाँ, तो उसमें बेसिकली ये था कि आपको पता है कि तो बाबर खड़ा हुआ तो पाकिस्तान टीम जो है वो हैज अ चांस. द मोमेंट बाबर गेट्स आउट, the Pakistani team completely just kind of loses it. Very similar to what we saw in like the first innings as well. जब बाबर खड़ा हुआ, we were doing really well. From the moment he got out, the entire team collapsed. तो वो तेंदुलकर के साथ बहुत होता था. उस टाइम मुझे याद है कि 90s तेंदुलकर अगर देखा जाए, post 2000s तो he had a lot of other great batsmen around him, जो उसको support भी करते थे. But this is like more 90s. क्या कह सकते हैं? He's a lot of 90s Tendulkar. Like this really amazing sort of just statistical giant almost. किसकी मतलब performance आप देखें, test one day matches में his averages almost close to 60, T20 क्या कह सकते हैं, test matches approaching 50 now. There's like this amazing statistics and all that. Numbers की बहुत बड़ी इसकी game है, सारा कुछ चल रहा है. Team में भी he's like overwhelmingly the number 1 player, like the biggest celebrity as well, the biggest star as well. So almost like one man बड़ा shows बन गया. Even has he of course has more players around him. It's not like a direct comparison. Because obviously he now has like a lot of other superstar players around him, like Shaheen Afridi भी आपका आ गया, and you have क्या से कह सकते हैं other batsmen as well who are performing as well around him, or in some cases like Test match Abdullah for example, so he has the same kind of numbers that Babar has for तो वो आप उस तरह से कह सकते हैं, but still in terms of celebrity and in terms of like just sheer importance and like gravitational force जो उसकी है, it's very similar to Tendulkar. तो वो तेंदुलकर का, लेकिन इसलिए मेंशन कर रहा हूँ, तेंदुलकर was also made captain because he was just the biggest player and he did not perform well at all उस टाइम पे, बल्कि इवन उसकी बैटिंग भी खराब हो गई थी. Credit to Babar, his batting has actually remained pretty good. In fact, she got much better when he became captain. He started making even more runs. I think वही बात है कि once he actually left captaincy, he actually was able to do even better. मुझे लगता है कि उसकी वर्ल्ड कप के दौरान परफॉर्मेंस एग्जाम्पल डाउन हुई है. Maybe he's still not at that level that he was before. I feel like the pressure is sometimes just get to him. But वही बात है कि for the sake of his team, for the sake of his own batting, he actually left captaincy, and I think उसके बाद Ganguly जो है वो came in, and Ganguly was able to take that team forward and and maybe eventually people who took it even further ahead. So in that sense, I feel like if he leaves the captaincy, there are really good players out there who are better captains than him. And it's not कि बात को टीम से निकाल देना चाहिए, बात नहीं है. Even we don't think he's that bad of a captain either. But there are better options available. And वही बात है कि Babar's own performance will actually improve as well, but once he doesn't have that constant pressure of being captain as well. And उसका अपना एक रोल और अपनी एक, जिस तरह तेंदुलकर के लोग कहते थे कि once even when he left the captaincy, he was still to be a leader in the dressing room. Most people looked up to him in that way. That's not going to change Babar either. जो आपने बात की थी ना कि like he's like a tribal chieftain in a lot of ways. He's someone who became the captain because he was better at everyone. He was better than everyone else. And that's not going to change. He's still going to be better than everyone else in the team. But he won't have that added pressure of being the captain and constantly being criticized in the media and all. The captain can absorb that to some extent and allow him to kind of take up that natural role that he's still doing, and he can actually do better once he doesn't have that kind of limitation.
I think Rizwan is very much suited to that role because
Hmm.
he's
हाँ.
A B plus player. B plus players become captain, not A plus player. Like
Hmm.
he's not too good, but he's not too bad either. तो उसकी टीम में जगह भी बनती है, but ऐसा भी नहीं है कि he's the best player in the team. And those sort of players should become captain. Even like when you talk about Saurav Ganguly, like people उनकी तारीफ बहुत करते हैं, but at the end of the day, he averages 41, and he has averaged 41.
I'm still a great player. Like, I mean, no doubt he's a great player. Amongst like talking about the best batsman at the time, still probably like number 3 or number 4. मुझे इनका triangle उस टाइम पे था, उसमें number 1 में जो था, then you had Rahul Dravid, then you had Ganguly, like during the late 90s and like the early 2000s. So, yeah, probably that's one thing as well. But what about like you see these guys, they really happen. They've proven themselves themselves. Know how much Shaheen Afridi, अगर उसको बनाया जाए, and he's done well for Lahore. I don't know कि as a captain कैसा होगा अगर वो बनता है तो. Also, he's kind of injury prone and जो मुझे लगता है, so I don't know how feasible it is to make him a captain in that sense. You know, कि बाकी जो players तो खेलते रहेंगे, he might not be, uh, you know, stay in the team long enough. So that's also something to consider as well. But yeah, I mean, that I think also is something because obviously it's not even that I blame him for these losses. I think of all the people, considering the amount of blame he's getting, the least responsible, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But he is responsible, obviously. His responsibility है. There's a thing to go around and all of them share the blame in some regard. I feel like he is just to blame, but still must shoulder some of that burden. And in that sense, I feel like he probably will be dropped from the captaincy at some point. Will be difficult. वही बात पहले भी की थी कि उसको निकालने के लिए you need to have 2 or 3 bad seasons. एक बुरी सीरीज नहीं होने वाला, but if Pakistan, for example, get whitewashed against England, I think these will be very strong from the Test captaincy. They might not remove him entirely. मुझे लगता है कि उसको और T20 को नहीं निकालने.
नहीं अभी इस तरह नहीं निकाल सकते. आई थिंक ये निकलेगा न्यूजीलैंड के सीरीज के बाद. इवन अगर ये न्यूजीलैंड की सीरीज जीत गया, maybe that would put a band-aid और सब. मसला ये ना कि बैक टू बैक सीरीज आए. It would be pretty awkward कि एकदम से 20 में सीरीज के ना निकाल दिया. That would be not like, considering how Rameez is so much concerned about international news, so international news will not perceive this as something decent.
हाँ, बाबर का मसला है कि if बाबर का भी अपना एक international वो बात है, at this point internationally people know Babar Azam. That's too much. Like Pakistan cricket Babar Azam. A lot of people they don't know a lot of other Pakistani people. They might know Shaheen Afridi now to some extent. It's basically Shaheen on one side and Babar on the other end. I don't know if they know too many of the Pakistani players. रिजवान हाँ वो भी वो नंबर 1 बन गया था तो लिहाजा चले लोग उसको जानते हैं. To some extent maybe शादाब कुछ लोग जानते हैं, but वही बात है कि that they not आपका स्टार एक ही है बड़ा, which is Babar. So if he gets removed, like international news for sure. That can be avoided.
He probably get
honestly.
removed like May में निकलेगा.
I'm sorry, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही. Voice isn't that bad.
I'm saying he'll get removed during the season break. So like जो May में जो बीच में मैच नहीं आ रहा है ना.
हाँ, maybe they might do as well. So yeah, I mean मेरे हिसाब से तो फिर यही sort of एक बनता है. That's how I kind of see it. These are the 3 things which are like kind of over a period of time loss as well. This loss was like a long time coming in some ways. एक particular में या एक particular decision pass हुआ था, but small bad decisions had to be made in order for us to reach this level. Yeah, going ahead, let's just talk about maybe the last test match will be. I don't know. Pakistan might get salvage considering kitna close the pehle 2 matches. But it might just be because England might not try hard to go for a whitewash, and Pakistan will probably try not to get whitewashed at this point, even though they don't have much to play for. But they certainly would want to be whitewashed at home. It would be premium for them. So they might probably get a result in the last test match or just be a draw. मुश्किल है to be honest. खेल रहे हैं, 20 बॉल में पहले खेलेंगे, loss likely. But we will see. Tactics तो खेलने वाले पाकिस्तानी खेलते हैं जो खेलेंगे. But yeah, I mean, अभी फिलहाल की बात है कि none of these situations will implemented जो हम कह रहे हैं होने वाली है, राजा की जाने वाला है, ना बाबर की जाने वाला है. What we're advocating is कि तीनों को हटा दो. Essentially, बात हमारा solution है कि तीनों को हटा दो. हाँ, कि ना रमीज चल रहा है, he doesn't really understand what he's doing. The coaches are incompetent and we have to communicate both the Pakistani so much better. He should be captain. को होना चाहिए in summer. So essentially that's what we're saying, which is like very classic Pakistani fan वाली भाषा सबको हट, कोई भी ठीक नहीं, everyone is wrong. Essentially जब अंदाजा हो कि हमने हरकत की है, लेकिन इतना at least made like very क्या कह सकते detailed argument for what we were saying. We're being very careful about this. हम एक logical theory की बात कोशिश करें in order to let everyone, we're not being emotional here, we're just trying to be reasonable argument क्यों इन लोगों को यहाँ पे why we should have like a different management and maybe a better decision. Probably not a good idea. To at least start fixing things. Some captain be another decision that would. But वही बात है कि I definitely in the next couple of months, maybe in the next month शायद कुछ ना कुछ शुरू होता है, but अभी तो फिलहाल मुझे नहीं लग रहा. So yeah, that's.
अभी फिलहाल जिल्लत है और कुछ.
हाँ चलिए ठीक. I think we should conclude that. काफी लंबा already हो गया. So yeah, let's conclude the episode for today and see you all next time.